In this video, I'll show you how to edit like this animation you're seeing on screen right now. So first of all, to do these Apple style animations, you're going to need assets. I'm going to provide you with a link to a Figma, which has a bunch of different iOS/Apple assets. All of these are customizable and all of these are their own individual layer. So once you open the link that I dropped down in the description, by the way, you're going to have to sign in. Just sign in through Gmail, it takes 2 seconds. And then the one we're going to use for this video is going to be the camera at the very right hand side over here. Let's click on it and let's copy as SVG. Now open up Illustrator, create a new project, and then simply Control V to paste it in. Now if you're wondering why are we pasting it into Illustrator, the reason for this is so that you have the ability to customize every single layer basically. Because as you can see right now, everything is in one layer. So we need to change that. Now, first of all, make sure you are selected in layers, then click the drop down on layer 1 and click the drop down on clip group and group. Now, what we want to do is select every single one of these layers in the group by clicking on the top one, scrolling down to the very bottom, hold shift and click on the very bottom, and then just drag it outside of clip group so that it's basically underneath layer 1. Now, just click on layer 1, go up here to these 3 dashes, click on them, and then release to layers sequence. Now when you click that, all of these are their own individual layers which you can customize, which you'll see later on. So all you got to do now is go up to file and then save this folder. Now once you have it saved, open up After Effects and let's create a new composition. We're going to call this iPhone UI animation. Okay, now right click and let's create a new solid over here. Let's make it a little bit darker than white, just so that we have some sort of background. And let's create a circle. So select the ellipse tool. Let's turn off the stroke. And the circle will be a little bit brighter than the background, so it's visible. Click and hold, circle in the middle, nice. And let's turn on motion blur on the shape and the white solid in the background. Let's duplicate the shape layer. And the one on top, we're going to make a bit smaller and change the color of it. You can obviously use whatever colors you want, but we're going to go for this Apple style animation. Remember to rename your layers and stay organized. So the back one we're going to call white circle, the top blue circle, and now we're going to duplicate the back white circle and change this to white circle shadow, because we're going to make a little shadow on the back. Drag this underneath and add a fast box blur. Now let's add a bit more of a radius and change the color to slightly darker gray so that it looks like a shadow. And already you can see the sort of Apple style that we're going for. Now let's select the pen tool and use the same blue we used for the middle circle to create a triangle. This we're basically going to use for a sort of radar. So let's position that underneath all the other layers, call this radar. And now let's select the mask and create a mask from this radar. So let's go over here, let's cut at the top and then invert it, as you can see, and now add a bit of a feather. Now let's just pre-compose everything by selecting all the layers, right clicking, going on pre-compose and calling this map circle. Okay, let's just adjust our anchor point and make it a bit smaller because it's a bit big at the moment. And now let's create a stroke. This is basically going to be the path that the blue line is going to take, so obviously we can draw whatever you want. Make sure you turn off fill though, and the stroke we're just going to keep it as a blue. Adjust the path however you want it, doesn't really matter, but I think this kind of zigzag shape will look nice. And now let's reposition the map circle, and by pressing R we can change rotation, change that, and then put it on top. By the way, I am using a lot of keybinds and stuff like that in this video. If you're curious, I did add them all to the After Effects masterclass inside of the Bootcamp. Now I recommend you go to the keyboard shortcut notes instead of the video. I made a video for it as well, but everything is here in the notes for you to use. There's also a bunch more lessons, by the way, not just like the beginner After Effects stuff. So if you do want to see like behind the scenes of me landing a $2,000 client, or you want access to a 21-page doc about how to actually create good AI images, or you want to attend one of the calls where you can ask me any questions directly and have me review one of your edits, then I do suggest you join the Bootcamp, link in the description. Anyway, going back to the edit, what we're going to do now is open up the pre-composition. And what we're going to do now is start playing around with some of these settings. So we're going to change the opacity to go from 25 to about 45 in just a few keyframes. And then we're going to select the keyframes and go up here to property and add this loop out expression to all of them. Now we're going to go back and we're going to add a trim path to this shape layer right now so that we start from 0, and in a few seconds we will expose the entire path. Okay, so now let's just add easy ease, and if you open up the graph editor and select these two, over here we have these handles. Now with these, I basically want to have the line start coming in fast and end a bit slowly. As you can see on the graph, we basically want to have the graph be at the highest point possible at the moment where we want the highest speed possible. So of course, if you have a graph that's like this, that means at this point it's going to be super fast. So let's change that. Let's make it super fast at the start and it'll slow down at the end. So yeah, as you can see, it's super fast at the start and it slows down at the end. Right, let's open up the map circle again and we can play around with the scale a little bit. Now the expression that I just pasted onto it, it's basically a super smooth Apple style expression, which I'll leave in a pinned comment down below. Now we're going to copy the expression only. So we're going to paste it onto this scale, and again we're going to go from 0 to 115, paste the expression we just copied, and as you can see, we have that Apple style clean animation. Now we're also going to offset it a little bit so that's a little delayed, and then we're going to parent this circle shadow to the white circle. And now let's change up the scale and rotation of the radar. Okay, and then let's also change the anchor point from the radar to the center, so that if we rotate it, it's not going to basically rotate at this axis, it's going to rotate at this axis, right? So obviously we want the radar to be inside of the circle. It's positioned inside the circle, and let's change the scale so that it scales up. So basically go from 0 to about 100, and it'll also rotate at the same time. Let's make it a bit faster. And again, copy the expressions. And guys, honestly, this expression that you're using, this is going to make all of your Apple style UIs so much easier. It's a very popular one, but as you can see, it just gives it that bounciness and that Apple style to it. Super clean, super smooth. Now let's go back, and already you can see this animation coming to life. All we've done here is a very simple shape animation. So yeah, let's add the position and let's play around with it a little bit. So we'll have it moving a little bit. Easy ease those. And now the circle is moving along the line. Let's also add a rotation at this moment so that the radar rotates with the line basically. Let's just play around with that a little bit more. So what I'm doing here is basically adjusting the position and rotation to make it basically follow the line. Now you can adjust this to your own likings. That's looking a bit better, but obviously we want the radar to kind of look where we're going first, which is why I offsetted the radar by a little bit. Now we're just smoothing out these by a little bit, and also if you bring them up a little bit, it should give that non-stop sort of motion. Nice, nice, nice. As you can see, looking a lot smoother right now. Okay, now what I'm going to do is basically adjust the shape layer trim path so that as the circle is moving along the line is just going to disappear behind the circle. So we're basically doing opposite of what we've done at the start. We're selecting the start of the trim path instead of the end. Now we're just going to copy and paste the motion graph. You can do it however you want. So that nice, nice, nice. And again, we're going to make another keyframe here, make it follow the circle, and again, copy the graph and paste it. Now you can use Flow, you can use Easy Copy, whatever plugin you decide to use, or you can manually do it if you want. But okay, that's looking nice. Make sure you save your projects, by the way, guys. All right, let's close all the layers, and now let's start playing around with 3D. So if we create a 3D layer and parent everything to null, we'll be able to play around with it a little bit. So since it's a 3D layer, we can change the position and scale, and we'll add those keyframes at the very start so nothing gets messed up. And now let's play around with it a little bit. First of all, let's start with a little zoom in, and let's bring the graphs a little closer. So it's like a fast zoom in, but let's offset this a little bit. Now we can play around with the orientations since it's the 3D space. So let's see the R rotation, Y rotation, and Z rotation. Let's add easy ease to that, and let's change it to classic 3D instead of advanced 3D so that you can see the animation better. And there we go. This is looking a lot nicer already. By the way, if you're wondering why I'm speedrunning through this, I do have a complete beginner's guide to After Effects where I go over like the nulls I'm showing you, where I go over the 3D camera and all this kind of stuff. But these are all like fundamentals of After Effects. If you don't want to join my course, you can find other tutorials about these specific subjects on YouTube if you want. The MM Bootcamp just has all these already anyway. But I do think that's a weak argument for not joining a paid course. I literally spent thousands of dollars on joining editing communities when I was starting to edit, because even though that I knew every single course I paid for, I could have found on the internet. However, inside the MM Bootcamp, you actually get the ability to land clients directly from me since I own an editing agency. So I have a huge incentive to make you the best possible editor in the shortest amount of time. And also, the big benefit is that you can actually talk to people who have made it in the same space. You can ask me questions directly, give me context about your situation so that I can actually help you land clients, make better edits, and whatever else you're looking for. But yeah, anyway, let's create another null object over here, make that a 3D layer. The reason I made a second null object, by the way, is because it'll make it a lot smoother rather than just using keyframes on one null object. Right, so what I'm trying to do is basically just position this at a completely different angle right now. I think kind of like a top-down bird's eye view would be nice. And let's see what this looks like roughly. So yeah, as you can see, it's constantly moving because of the offset we gave with the two nulls. Right, now let's create a new null object again and parent the last one again to this one. So basically we're parenting the old null to the new null. Now let's add the same keyframes and again add an offset. And now let's continue with the animation. Now let's see what it looks like with all the offsets and nulls. I spotted a little bit of a glitch in the line back there, by the way, so let's adjust that and it should be good. Now I'm just going to adjust the top down view so that it's a bit more of a bird's eye view. And again, guys, you just want to basically be meticulous about the details. It's all of these little things that will make your edits so much more expensive. Right, let's save our project, and now we can open up the Illustrator file that we have made at the start of the video. Let's just drag it in and that'll open up a separate composition. And okay, we have, as you can see, all these different layers that we can customize. So let's scroll to the bottom, and I'm basically selecting all the layers that I want to customize. So I'm thinking all these texts first, and let's just change the position of them. So we apply the position where it is now, go back, then we can bring it down a little bit so that it kind of pops in animated. Now again, paste that same expression that we used. It's a very popular expression in all these, and let's paste it on every single other layer. And also let's color these layers so that it's a lot better organized. Now we can also adjust the opacity. So let's set it 100, let's set it to 0 so that it floats in nice. I think I forgot to do one of them, which is this one over here. Okay, now let's do the circles, same thing, add on easy ease and then the expression that we added. And as you can see, the text and the iPhone button are popping in nicely now. Now let's adjust the black bottom square so that it slides in like that. Honestly guys, this is all simple stuff. I mean, this Apple animation is super simple to do once you know the basics very well. So now let's offset this by a little bit. And so the back, we're just going to do a little scale animation, and for the bottom we're going to do a rotation animation and a scale as well, why not? So it's going to spin and it's going to kind of pop in from the very bottom. So let's see what that looks like. By the way, I really want to encourage you to actually try these projects yourself. Like, don't just watch me do it. Apply what you're learning to your own projects. Because I think most of you that are beginners at After Effects or somewhat intermediate already know how to do most of this. You should already know how to do 3D camera. You should already know how to add a null, how to parent objects to each other. These are all like very basic After Effects skills to have. If you don't know any of these, like as I said, you don't have to join my course if you really don't want to. You can look up anything I'm doing. Ask ChatGPT, look it up on YouTube, search Google for the answer. And again, the main thing you're learning from these videos is the way an editor is thinking as he's actually approaching an edit. Like what goes where. Also, like where am I getting my assets from? That's a very important one. But I do encourage you to open up a project and actually apply what you're learning to it. Anyway, let's animate the rest of it now. So let's click on top box. Let's find what we're trying to animate. And now what we can actually do is create a shape layer over it, lower the opacity, and let's just change the size to match the background, because I want to show you that you don't need to always use the assets. Like for example, you could just get a PNG image of a iPhone screenshot and just redraw every single asset if you wanted to, you know. If you can't find an asset like I just showed you in this video, that's another way to do it, you know. This is of course the best and most time efficient way, but yeah, you can do it many other ways. After Effects, there's many different approaches to even the same result you want to get, you know. Now again, we can just change the path of the rectangle size, something like this, so it bounces in left to right. Okay, now let's select all these other circles and texts, and let's just add an opacity to them. Again, we're doing the same thing that we've been doing for all these other effects. What I'm doing here is slightly offsetting them, by the way, so that they come in at different times. Yeah, so now they're coming in at different times from left to right. Let's make it a bit faster though. Now let's select the circle over here, and this is I think the last thing we have to animate. So let's parent the icon to the layer under it, and let's just do a simple scale animation. And again, let's add the same expression we've been using for the entire video, because it's a very smooth, free to use bounce expression. Oh, I forgot about the top, so let's do the top now. This we can just do a slider animation, easy ease. Okay, it's looking pretty clean, guys. So the thing about these like Apple style animations is the transitions. They're super well executed and super clean. So obviously everything we've done to this point is all pretty basic, and you can spend as much time in the details as you want. Obviously the more time the better, but you want to spend the most time in the transitions, because this is what will give it that like Apple style look. So now we have basically two separate circles that we're trying to animate into each other. The goal is to make it seem like one circle, just changing positions and changing scenes, even though we're changing two completely different scenes and just trying to morph them together. So now what we're going to do is paste the circle from the camera layer and paste it into the map circle, and let's just try and match it as best as we possibly can in terms of size. So something like this. And let's click on opacity and let's turn down that opacity, and let's basically do the opposite opacity on the other ones. Now, as I said, what we're going to do is swap these out so that the opacity basically turns off. So basically what they're doing here is swapping the positions. So one is being turned off, one is being turned on, and that includes the radar, which we need to do now, which will go from 100 to 0 or 15, maybe something like that, not 100. Okay, and then we can go back now, and now we should be able to see this circle changing. Yes, so it's changing in real time. Okay, let's add another null here, and on this other null, we're basically going to adjust the scale. Sorry, I forgot to parent it, that's why it wasn't working. So we're going to adjust the scale and actually start piecing this transition together slowly. So I kind of disconnected the circle from the line. As you can see, the line kind of goes off on its own. Let's close that up and go over here, and let's kind of finish it off. Okay, so basically this line is going to disappear at this moment. Yeah, so something like this. Since this is the transition, we want to slightly get rid of that line, and the cleanest way to do it will probably be, yeah, something like this. Okay, so as you can see, rather than the blue circle following the line to the very end and then having it disappear, now let's bring on the camera that we made. So if you remember, this is basically the transition we made on the circle is the pre-composition that we're bringing on now, which we are going to import onto the main file. So now we're just going to find the center so that we can position them in the same place, scale it, make sure it's on 3D, and parent it to the null. Okay, so again, the transition is the hardest part. So let's select all these layers and bring them back. Because quick tip, if you actually, whatever moment you are in the composition, wherever your playhead is positioned, if you double click on a pre-composition, it's going to bring you to that exact moment. So what I just done there is I positioned it at the cut that I want the transition to start. Then I opened up the pre-composition, and then I moved all of the layers to the point where I want the transition to start. Then I basically trimmed the start, so this 100% doesn't interfere with the start of animation, and it all starts right here. Okay, so the animation starts here, but we need to bring it down. Right, there we go. So that the circle is basically stays above that. And let's parent that, and now we're going to just create a new null again for the cameras, set it up in position, scale, and what we're doing here is obviously just bringing it closer and positioning it more in the center. So yeah, awesome. Everything's working together. As you can see from the rotation, it snaps into place. This is looking like it's actually all piecing together. Now we just simply import any video, and again, this can be anything, by the way. So we're going to import that, and then what we can do is position it down the very, very bottom. Actually, no, let's find what's covering it, because something's covering it. Okay, so BG, the background. So underneath the background, and then I think we should be able to texture that to the background. So now there we go. Basically the white box was called BG, which was the background, and we added a texture to it. So ultimately this can be anything, right? This can literally be a video of you that you now have a fully customizable camera recording of. That's why I said this works for any niche, right? Like, this isn't just for super high quality animations. This can be for a talking head video or a vlog or anything that you want some sort of a iPhone camera for. Okay, so now we can play around with the layer 32 inside a map circle, and again add the same expression. Honestly, this expression is goated. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is add a black solid onto the camera layer and position it like behind all of the buttons, because we're trying to just give that little flash kind of animation. Then track matte that to the background, and now we can just play around with the opacity and time it at the same time as the button is kind of going down. Now obviously the button isn't in this composition, so we'll go back and see what it looks like if it's timed well. Yep, it's timed perfect. Now what we can do is freeze frame and make sure you duplicate that background, freeze frame that. So we freeze framed the face of the dog. The reason we're doing that is because we're trying to add that to the gallery. So that's going to go above all these so that it's not opacityed, and we're going to position that picture down the bottom right. So basically what we've done there is freeze framed it at the moment that the button goes down, at the moment I took a picture of the dog, and again, let's just make sure it's all symmetrical. And then what we're going to do is give it that little scale bounce animation and add the same expression once again, because honestly, once you have this expression, that's basically all you need for these Apple style edits. Nice. Now let's see what this looks like. Let's just change the positioning a little bit because it's a little fair at some point. Let's add some flow to it. Now let's watch it again. Slides down, takes a picture, and super smooth. So again, every single part of this is customizable and was created from scratch, right? So if you're going for those Apple style animations, you just need to make sure that everything is flowing smoothly, nice clean transitions, and a very good flow. And that's it. If you want to see more of these animation effects, then make sure you subscribe. And again, if you're interested in learning more about editing and want to fast track your growth to earning as much money as possible with video editing in the shortest amount of time possible, then I suggest you join the Diamond Bootcamp, where you can get all of my assets, you can get all the websites I use, and you have hours of content to learn from, as well as our weekly calls where you can ask me any questions you want. But if not, that's totally cool. All I ask is subscribe if you enjoyed, and comment below what you want to see next. See ya.